I was elbow-deep in bread dough when my mother stepped into the kitchen, wearing that expression I'd come to dread, one that meant she and Dad had been talking about my future again. "Anna," she began, nervously twisting the ties of her apron, "your father and I have been thinking." I didn't look up. I let the rhythm of kneading dough anchor me, the warm scent of yeast grounding me in a familiar morning sunlight spilled through the cafe windows, catching on the copper fixtures I'd chosen during the renovation. Every inch of Sweet Dreams Bakery and Cafe bore my signature, from the vintage wallpaper to the curated menu of artisanal breads and pastries. "Let me guess," I said, keeping my voice steady. "It's about James." Relief flickered across her face like I'd saved her from delivering bad news. "Yes. You know, he's had such a hard time since the firm let him go. Your father thinks the cafe would be perfect for him. He has an MBA, after all." I let out a short laugh, sharp as broken glass. "Mom, James doesn't know anything about running a bakery. He's never worked in food service. He doesn't even cook. But he understands business," she insisted. "Numbers, management, all the things you struggle with." I stopped kneading and turned to her. "Struggle with? I've turned a profit every month since we opened. I paid off the startup loan in half the time. We have a wait list for custom orders." But none of it mattered. I could see it in her eyes. I was still the daughter who walked away from business school to chase a dream in flour and sugar. James was still the golden boy, even after being fired for reckless trades that cost his firm millions. "Your father's already talked to James," she said, plowing forward. "He's excited. Think about it, she could focus on baking, and he could manage the business side." I wiped my hands on my apron, leaving ghostly white prints across the fabric. "This is my business, Mom. I built it. Dad might have co-signed the loan, but I turned this place around." She reached out and touched my arm, gently, condescendingly. "Honey, we just want what's best for everyone. James needs this. He has a family to support." "And I don't matter," I asked quietly. "My dreams don't count because I'm not married, because I'm a woman." "Don't be dramatic," she said. "Your father's already drafted the papers. James takes over as managing director next month." The words knocked the breath from me. For a moment, the world tilted. "Dad can't do that," I whispered, but even as I said it, I remembered the loan, the fine print, his signature, the clause I'd agreed to without hesitation, because I never imagined he'd turn it into a weapon. That evening, Dad and James showed up after closing. I sat across from them in one of the booths. I'd upholstered myself, hands clenched beneath the table as they laid out their plans. "We streamline," James said, scrolling through a tablet. "Cut the artisan stuff, focus on mass production. No more of that boutique nonsense." "That nonsense built our brand," I said, heat rising in my voice. He rolled his eyes. "Customers will adjust. We need scale, franchises, real profit." Dad nodded, satisfied. "James has a vision. It's time this place grew up." I looked around at the handwritten chalkboard menu, the wall of customer photos, the pastry case gleaming with creations made by hand and heart. Every inch told a story. My story, and it was being rewritten. "If I say no?" I asked, though I already knew. Dad's face turned to stone. "Then I'll call in the loan. You can't afford to buy me out." He was right. Every cent had gone back into the cafe, new ovens, fair wages, building something that could last. I didn't have the cash to fight him. James leaned back, smug. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Bake your muffins. Let the grown-ups handle the business." I stood, slowly, reached into my pocket. My fingers closed around my keychain, a tiny copper whisk, gifted by my first employee on opening day. I set the keys on the table. And for the first time that day, I smiled. I set the keys on the table with a soft clank. "Go ahead," I said, my voice calm and steady. "Take it. You're the man of the family, you must know best." James snatched them up like a prize. Dad began to say something about how I was finally being reasonable, but I was already walking away. I pushed through the kitchen doors one last time, trailing my fingers along the industrial mixture I'd saved for months to afford. Then I grabbed my bag from the office, and walked out the back door without looking back. What they didn't know was that I'd been preparing for this moment for weeks. I had documented everything, photographed processes, duplicated every recipe, backed up supplier contracts and customer records. I'd even started drafting a new business plan the moment James began tossing around phrases like scaling up and increased margins. I knew James. When he wanted something, he usually got it, and then, just as reliably, he ruined it. I wasn't going to let him destroy my dream without a backup plan. That night, as I drove home, I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I counted the days until James would prove exactly why he should never have been trusted. It didn't take long. The transformation was immediate. First, he fired Maria, my head pastry chef and one of the heartbeats of the café. Too expensive, he told the staff. Next, he slashed ingredient costs, replacing our carefully sourced products with cheap, generic alternatives. Our signature pastries, replaced by pre-packaged goods from a bulk supplier. I watched from the sidelines, getting updates from Lucy, one of the baristas who still texted me almost daily. The bread's flouncy now, pre-baked stuff, he tossed your starter. TV screens everywhere, ads on a loop, it looks like a fast food joint. I didn't respond, but I archived every message. Each one was another tile in the mosaic of his failure events I knew I'd need soon. 3 months in, my mother called. The numbers are concerning, she admitted, her voice brittle. Jane says it's just growing pains, but your father's worried. Would you consider coming back, just to help out, temporarily? No, I said, and hung up. Instead, I focused on my plan. I took a job at a bakery across town, working pre-dawn shifts under a seasoned owner named Margaret. She'd been in the business for 30 years and carried her own scars. Once lost her bakery to an ex-husband in a bitter divorce. Men like your brother, she said one morning as we rolled croissants side by side, they think it's just spreadsheets and sales projections, but a good bakery lives and breathes. It has soul. You can't mass-produce that. She was right. James didn't understand that our customers came for more than pastries. They came for connection, for community, for the kind of care you can't buy in bulk. By month 4, the café's reputation had crumbled. The food blog that once crowned us best bakery in Boston published a brutal takedown. Longtime customers voiced their disappointment across social media. The once warm glow around sweet dreams had gone cold. James's response: hire a PR firm and send out discount coupons. 5 months in, the call started. Your brother's behind on payments, one supplier told me. He promised a wire transfer that never came. Others followed, concerned and angry. I logged every call, every invoice, every unpaid balance. My file grew thicker. And then, exactly 6 months after I handed over the keys, my father appeared at my apartment. He looked smaller than I remembered, tired, defeated. We need to talk, he said. I let him in but didn't offer tea or warmth. Last time I gave him something, it had been handmade cinnamon rolls. He gave them to James. He Saturday on the couch, sitting like a man carrying the weight of his own mistakes. The cafe is in trouble, he said quietly. James made some bad decisions. The bank's threatening foreclosure. I waited, let the silence do the talking. We need your help, Anna. The staff's threatening to walk. The customers keep asking for you. Even your mother admits we were wrong. I tilted my head, and James? His jaw tightened. He's moved on. Says the market was wrong. The location was flawed. He's talking about launching a crypto startup now. Of course he was. James never stayed for the cleanup. How bad is it? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Bad, he admitted. 3 months behind on payments. Suppliers are demanding cash. We failed a health inspection last week. If something doesn't change soon, it's over. I stood and walked to my desk, pulling out a thick folder. Inside, 6 months of documentation, photos, customer complaints, unpaid bills, regulatory citations, supplier warnings, everything I'd need to take back what was mine. I Saturday across from him, the folder resting on my lap, like a final judgment. Here's what's going to happen. I said. You and Mom are going to sign the cafe over to me, fully. No co-signing, no conditions, no strings. I want complete control, and I mean complete. He didn't argue. Because finally, after all this time, even he could see the truth. Sweet Dreams was never just a business. It was mine, and I was going to save it this time, on my terms. I'll take over the debt, negotiate with the bank, and rebuild everything James destroyed. But we're not done yet. My father opened his mouth to speak, but I cut him off. You're going to write a formal letter to every employee James fired, offering them their jobs back with back pay, and you'll publish a public apology in the local paper, admitting it was a mistake to remove me from the business. He stared at me, his daughter, the one he'd never quite believed in, and I saw it the moment the truth landed, the moment he realized just how badly he'd underestimated me. You've been planning this, he said quietly. Since the day you handed my dream to James, I replied. Did you really think I'd just walk away? 2 weeks later, I stood in my cafe again. Truly mine this time. No co-signatures, no oversight, no conditions. The papers were signed, the apologies issued, the damage control complete. Maria was back in the kitchen, already mixing up our signature brioche. Lucy and the team were carefully reinstalling the vintage touches we'd storied, restoring the soul of Sweet Dreams, one framed photo and antique light fixture at a time. That week, the local food blog published a new headline. Sweet Dreams returns to its roots. Original owner reclaims her café. Our customers began trickling back, drawn in by the scent of fresh bread and the quiet buzz of something beautiful being reborn. On our first official day back, my mother stopped by. She hovered by the counter, unsure of her place. I was piping buttercream flowers onto a wedding cake on of the offerings James had axed as non-essential. I'm sorry, she said eventually. We should have trusted you, should have seen what you were capable of. I finished the sugar flower before I responded. Yes, you should have. She hesitated. And James, will you forgive him? I thought of my brother, of chasing his next scheme, leaving a trail of broken promises in his wake. No, I said honestly, but he did me a favor. He showed me how strong I really am, how much I'm willing to fight for what matters, and he showed you exactly why you should have believed in me from the start. She nodded, quietly, and left without another word. I went back to my cake, to my kitchen, to the dream I had rebuilt with my own hands. A year later, Sweet Dreams was thriving. The debt was nearly gone. The community was back. We'd even expanded, opening a small baking school in the space next door, teaching others the skills I once had to fight to prove were worthwhile. James never came back. His crypto venture flamed out, and last I heard, he was dabbling in house flipping. I kept a framed photo in my office from the modernization era of the cold, corporate version of the cafe he tried to force into existence, a reminder that sometimes losing everything is what teaches you just how far you're willing to go to take it back. Yesterday, a young woman came in for an interview, fresh out of culinary school, nervous, hopeful, burning with quiet passion. My brother says I'm wasting my time, she said softly, that I should get a real job, something safe, something in business. I smiled. I saw myself in her for the fight, before the fire. Let me tell you a story, I said, motioning her toward a seat. A story about a baker who lost everything to her brother's business sense and how she got it all back and more.